guys, so on Brett's chassis, we're about ready to put it back on the jig and get ready to do like seat mounts and all that before we put the body on. So everything is ready to go. I got the back half carbon done. That's what I was working on last time. Matt got about half of the belly pan done. He got it like rough trimmed and stuff. So I finished drilling all the holes, finished fitting it, all that kind of stuff. I made a belly pan for under the trans, and then we got like a Kevlar lined belly pan for under the motor for if the block lets go or anything like that. It catches all the fun stuff. So that's all on. Everything's pretty well good to go. Matt got the rest of the Driveshaft enclosure done, so that's all done, ready to go. Oh, I guess back here, Brett said he wanted this panel Zeus on because just ease of working on it and stuff, so we went ahead and Zeus this on, but we put a little bit more Zeuses than we maybe normally would, because obviously we know this thing is for a fact going to be going, 230 to 250. So I wanted to make sure nothing tries to fly off or anything. So back here, I still need to do a few Zeuses on the very back, but that has to happen once it comes off the rotisserie, because our bracket here is blocking my access to put some Zeuses there. So other than that, that's about all that has happened. Obviously those belly pans and stuff take a while, especially with all of the Zeuses. This thing's like a Zeus farm now, so we can come over there, be a little easier. Show you the underside here. The mid plate still needs to get trimmed, so I did something a little different here on the front. I ended up going, instead of putting a Zeus or anything up here, I didn't want to do that because when you're taking the trans in and out, this, if it had a tab on here, it'd be sticking out like 1.5 inches, and it's just asking to get knocked off when you're dropping the trans out. You're in a hurry or something, you don't back it out far enough, you drop it, and it just bends the Zeus tab. So I didn't want to mess with that, so I did this. I put, there's a piece just like this on the other side of the belly pan, and there's just like a little, 32nd of an inch, whatever the thickness of this is, gap in between those pieces, and it just slides in, so that locks the front end, and then everything else just is held on with Zeus's. Everything else is pretty much just Zeused on. We didn't really do anything crazy or weird. Matt got the other mount for the steering rack done. That's pretty much it. It's ready to go on back on the jig and get ready for the body to go on. So pretty big step. It's been going pretty smooth. There hasn't really been anything that was weird or super challenging. Just a little bit different, doing some things for specific to him, based on what he already has and wants to reuse and stuff. So a couple things with the mid plate, like he's got this bracket that they made, and this goes off. It bolts to the bell housing and goes like right next to the starter. So he's got a cable off the back of his oil pump that drives his fuel pump, and obviously you want to keep the cable straight for the first 18 inches, so he just has this in there to help keep the cable straight. So we had to make that work, go through the mid plate and clearance the mid plate hoop and some of the double frame rail supports for that. So other than that though, everything's been pretty smooth sailing.
Pretty standard floor pan.
For the most part. The only weird thing I would say is back here. We normally don't break this up into multiple sections. But these are the fire bottle mount tubes. I think we already went over this, but being that we brought those all the way down to give as much clearance for the seat as possible, to get the fire bottles as low as possible, he wanted to, or we decided to bring those all the way down and flush them with the bottom, so we ended up having to break the panel up into multiple sections. Because the way we do these, the way we do the scallop strips is I make it to where the bottom of the panel is flush with the bottom of the tube. So it gives it a little bit cleaner look, there's fewer edges for air to catch on when you do it that way, rather than if you were to flush it like the top of the panel with the bottom of the tube and just like let it sit on top, technically on bottom.
On bottom, yeah.
If you were to do that, there's a much larger ridge for air to be able to catch. So just do that to help airflow and everything. Obviously, we want the bottom of the car as absolutely flat as possible for the best aerodynamics and not wanting to, rip panels off or anything like that. But yeah, went crazy with the Zeuses on this panel. I think there's like 22 or something by the time that we get the last few on here, because this is the trans-cross member, so this still has to get cut, and we put flanges on here. So the mid-plate, or not the mid-plate, the belly pans will have to get trimmed for those flanges and the bolts and everything. But we don't want to trim it or finish the Zeuses until we get that done, but we want to do that on the jig. That way we can get the motor and everything back in it, set everything, and get the trans mount back in the right spot. So yeah, everything else is, everything that is on the chassis is welded. There's nothing that needs to be finished so far. I got the wishbone mounts welded. About the last stuff back here is going to be shock mounts. That's like the last thing that needs to go back here. They'll be like in this general area. That's pretty much it though back here, because obviously the 4-link brackets and everything are already in, so 4-link bars, wishbone, all that's already done. Anti-roll bar's already done. So really all that it is now is just those shock mounts. And then all the rear suspension will be able to hang and be ready to go. So it still looks like there's a long way to go, because there's obviously no body or anything like that, but it's gonna go together pretty quick now that we have the main chassis and everything done. Like all the front suspension is done, the rear suspension is done, other than those shock mounts. All the floor pans are done, the belly pans are done, motor's mounted, trans is mounted. All the carbon on the back is done, so everything that can be done without the body is done. Everything else we have to have the body, because obviously we have tubs and all the carbon and stuff that has to extend out to the body. None of that can be done until you actually have the body to go to. And yeah, once it goes back on the jig, we're gonna do, before the body goes back on, we're gonna do seat mounts, column mount. When the pedals get here, we'll do the pedals. That's not a big deal if we have to go ahead and do the body before those come in. I think that's all we're doing before the body goes on, at least for testing, and get, start figuring out our firewall situation and stuff like that, and maybe start laying out how we want to do stuff. After we figure all that out, the body's probably going to come off one time. We'll paint everything that we're not going to be able to get to, so like we'll paint the inside of the body that won't be accessible when the chassis is in it, and then we'll paint the tops of the chassis and anything that you won't be able to get to once the body is actually mounted and like welded on, secure, not coming back off. Other than that though, that's pretty much where we're at. Moving along pretty good, I would say.